All right, welcome back everybody. I'm glad you made it this far. So we talked a little bit in the last video about knowing your why. I mean, the why is what drives everything. And so here we are now, why we're doing this, why we're growing, and we need to talk about education because after all, that's who we are and that's why we're here. So education has a couple roots from the Latin language, which is a dead language as I understand it now. One of those roots is educere. And educere means to draw out, to lead, to really empower someone is how I see what education really is. And the reason that we want to empower, the reason that we want to educate is because a true teacher makes more teachers, not more students. That is not what education is, and in the world that we know it, we have our formal education. But even within a formal education, we have what we call the School of Hard Knocks. You probably heard us talk about that earlier. It is the lifelong education, it's the growing, it's the learning, it's the why we keep getting up. And so here as teachers, here to draw out, here to lead, and to, in my mind, share my simplicity of what Bitcoin is. And hopefully you can pick up on that simplicity. And I want to mention real quick, one of many quotes that I love by Albert Einstein is this quote that says, "The definition of genius is taking the complex and making it simple." And that's what has happened. That's Satoshi Nakamoto, that anonymous person or persons, definitely took something that was out of reach, something that seemed complex, and they made it real simple. And it's even said that all of the pieces of the technology that is Bitcoin, all of those pieces were in play. They've been around for many years. No one put them together in quite this fashion, right? Because isn't that what it's about? Whether you make a cake, a pound cake, or whether you make an angel cake or a chocolate cake, all the ingredients pretty well are the same, but the proportions and the flavors vary accordingly and how you apply those ingredients. So that's what this is. Someone applied all of this in a certain way, and here we have Bitcoin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the Bitcoin white paper. Now, what is a white paper, you might ask? A white paper is basically that original documentation that says, here's who we are, here's what we are, here's our marketing plan, here's our financial plan, here's the problem we're solving, here's our technological outlay, here's our vision for the future. It is A to Z. Everything you need to know about a cryptocurrency project is in the white paper. And that fits very well with today's society anyway, because transparency is what it's all about. When you go to a website, and in fact, probably when you landed on this website, you were looking for, who is this? Like, what are they offering? You were looking for transparency. You weren't interested in just some pictures and a few buttons. You wanted to know who we are. So that's what a white paper does, is it lays it all out. It says, here is who we are. Whatever company is behind the currency, whatever team is behind the software, here's the white paper. The Bitcoin white paper says, a purely peer-to-peer version of electronic cash would allow online payments to be sent directly from one party to another without going through a financial institution. That's paragraph 1, introduction, Bitcoin white paper, released October 31st, 2008. And it's widely agreed upon that this was released as a response to the global financial collapse that happened in 2008. That's something we're going to get into later. That's a bit of a soapbox of mine, so we'll get on that later. Bitcoin is a very simple premise. It's a peer-to-peer version of electronic cash. Now, why would we need electronic cash? Well, let's think about it. If I do some work for you, and I say, okay, great, now I'm ready for you to pay me, and you're going to offer me a credit card. I don't take credit cards. I take checks, but yeah, they're not my favorite because I got to go to the bank, and then, you know, depending on how you handle things, somebody needs to know about that check because it gets routed through the bank. Ultimately, let's put it this way, I have to interface with the bank, no matter what, if you hand me a check. But if you hand me cash, nobody needs to know. That's between you and I. The bank doesn't need to know, Uncle Sam, the IRS, the person down the street, your partner, whoever that might be, they don't need to know about the transaction. They don't need to know what we did. It says all this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. But dealing on the internet, I don't have a way to interact with somebody over in the UK. I don't have a way to interact with them in a way that I can trust, in a way that keeps our transaction private. Because to interact from, or even keep it simple, even Amazon, we have to go through several channels for me to interact and purchase products from Amazon. Bitcoin is a system of electronic cash. In other words, we can transact directly, you and I, peer to peer, and nobody needs to know. And that, in my book, is awesome. Commerce on the internet has come to rely almost exclusively on financial institutions serving as trusted third parties to process electronic payments. That's what I talked about a minute ago. There's a middleman. Somebody has to know about it to process that credit, to process that check. While the system works well enough for most transactions, it still suffers from the inherent weaknesses of the trust-based model. Now, what that means is the bank is a whole other party that's responsible for our money and for my data and my identification. So there's lots of breaches. I mean, Wells Fargo right now, man, they've been taking heat for many years, and they took some heat recently, about a month ago, just continuing to have problems. The bigger the banks, it seems, the bigger the problems. What is needed is an electronic payment system based on cryptographic proof instead of trust, allowing any two willing parties to transact directly with each other without the need for a trusted third party or without the need for a middleman. So cryptographic proof, what is that? Cryptographic proof is cryptography. It's a means of securing and encrypting sensitive information that you don't want anybody else to know about. My favorite story of cryptography is World War II. The Germans had their Enigma machine, which is how they handled communications, because everybody knows, unfortunately in our world there's still wars, but in order to win that war, whoever controls the communication and the intelligence, they're going to win that war. So the Germans had their Enigma machine, but the Allied forces had the Navajo natives from America here, and they, using their own language, partnered with, I believe it was the Army, might have been the Marines, but they partnered with them and developed an entirely new system of coding and language that was never broken, never. That's cryptography. And cryptography now, when we get into a digital version, it's really taking off in ways that we can secure information better and better. And that's what Bitcoin does, is through trusting the software, through trusting the cryptography and the security of the system, we can transfer money from me to you, and nobody else needs to know. I don't need a middleman. I don't need a trusted third party, like it says, without the need for a trusted third party. So, you know, I want to talk for a second about Satoshi Nakamoto. Persons, it could be male, female, it could be a team. We don't know. What we do know, actually I've even heard that some discussions of artificial intelligence is what came up with Bitcoin. Like I said, it's a technology. So Bitcoin is a currency, but there's a technology, there's a software behind Bitcoin that is nothing short of revolutionary. And I'm not saying that lightly. Anyone that really stops to look at it and starts to wrap their head around what Bitcoin is, it's mind-blowing. It's like the internet. The internet is a very simple, it's a very simple network of communicating person to person, computer to computer. The World Wide Web, as we know it, is kind of an overlay that sits on top of that internet. And then imagine comes along Satoshi Nakamoto and introduces another means that lays on top of a second layer, let's put it that way, that lays on top of the internet, that allows for, rather than just communication and information, now we can transfer value. We can transfer assets, money, but not just money. There's all kinds of projects out there transacting anything that has to do with assets and value. And again, we'll get into that. So in the next video, what we're going to cover is just exactly what is digital money. Because Bitcoin is a digital currency. But the thing is, you're already using digital money. You just don't know it. I mean, you might know it, but I'm going to show it to you. And I really want you to see how this is working, because it's just a paradigm shift. It's just a step over from what you're already doing, but it's in a new system, it's in a new way. So I'll see you in the next video.